In case if we are using low-end firewall that is meant for SMB, we can use inbound port. We will see it demonstrated here today. And then setting up two firewalls provides what? It provides redundancy, and then it ensures business continuity. And then we talk about requirements. What are the requirements for HA deployment? Most of the firewalls have similar patterns in terms of requirement. Number one, if we are going to deploy two pair of firewalls in HA deployment, they should have these commonalities. Number one, they should be of the same model. They should have the same operation version, that is OS version. They should be connected through the same interfaces, and then they should have relatively the same lances. Also, after we configure the HA, and then we want to test, or during the production time, we should have at the back of our mind what are the conditions that can cause failover or that can trigger failover. One of them is if some parts or some links or group of links we are monitoring fail, the failover will trigger. And then we all know that control link sends hello messages and then heartbeat through ICMP pings through some consecutive times, which is 1000 milliseconds in Palo. So if those ping fails 3 consecutive times, the failover will be triggered. Another thing is we should check that can even trigger HA failover is if there's a problem with hardware failure. That can trigger the failover too. Another one that can see trigger failover is through maintenance. Maybe during maintenance window, the administrators intentionally or specifically run some command to trigger failover, or when the particular firewall is rebooting during the upgrade. Those are the three commonalities. There are some other things like CPU utilization, DOS, cabling fault, and so many other factors can cause trigger. But the first one I mentioned, those are the most commonly used cases. And then if you look at the screen, this is a Paloalto diagram designed as an example for HA deployment. This is not the best practice, but at least just to showcase how it is done. So we can see that we have two pair of firewalls. One is serving as active, one is serving as passive. And then apart from active passive mode, we have active mode deployment, which is very rare. Even as we speak now, a lot of enterprises are shifting their workloads to clouds. With that, some of the cloud providers, they don't welcome or they don't support some of this HA deployment because they have their own load balancer or they have their own fault tolerance deployed in the cloud. But when it comes to that, we'll talk based about that. So now we have two major links when we are deploying a Paloalto-HA. The first link is control link. The second link is data link. Control link is majorly used to do what? To send hello messages and heartbeats. And there's some other small configurations. But data link, as the name implies, is meant to send the traffic. It's meant for the data. That is, it is used for sessions synchronization, forwarding tables, and then some other configuration. If we have VPN, that link will be used for IPsec security associations. So there are some commands we can use to check if our functionality is working fine. But after the lab, we test it, and then we will see how it plays out. This diagram we are seeing here is just an example, but the best practice is the switch should be 2, and then the routers at the upstream should be 2. HA doesn't increase the bandwidth. It's just to prevent what? Single point of failure. So now I will switch over to the lab so that we can demonstrate how it works, and then we test. So this is the lab we're going to use. From my left-hand side, that's our trust zone. On the right-hand side is what? Is our control zone. Yesterday, I've configured some basic configuration from the Palo side. So today, we're going to continue with the HA configuration, and then we test it. So now let's log in to the firewall. So I put the credentials. I click enter. I'll go to the second one. I put the credentials. I click enter. Just to keep the firewall open. From the lab, we have 2 users that we're going to use to test the traffic. When we fail over, and then we test the failover, and then we see how, in case in the production, what is expected timeline before the failover occurs. So we start from the first Paloalto, that's the Paloalto-A. Let me even change I would love to change the name, the host name. So now we have not, if you look at here, we look at this dashboard, we see that the software version is 10.1.3 on this firewall. On the other side as well, if you go to the dashboard, we see that the software version is 10.1.3. So this is one of the criteria, and then we have met this. This firewall has no license, but there's some underlay that work together. This is just a software version. So, but if it is, for example, in an hardware that is put on the rack, high-end firewall or high-end Paloalto firewall, we have dedicated HA ports. So we can make use of it. And then as a best practice, it is expected that we have backup link. In case one of the links we are using for HA1 or HA2 fails, we should have a backup for it. That's one of the best practices. All right. So now the first step, when we are configuring HA, the first step is to enable it. So, and then to provide more visibility, we click on this widget. When we click on it, we see some functionality here or some tabs. So we click rightly on the system. On this system, we have interface. If you want the interface to come up, we click on it. We go back and then we click on high availability. As of now, we have not enabled it. See it here. We say HA not enabled, and the interfaces have not configured. So now, because we have not configured the interfaces, so let's first of all enable our HA interfaces. So we go to network, and under the network, there's an interface tab, and we click on our selected or our predetermined interface we want to use for the HA, or interfaces that will participate in HA configuration. From my lab here, I have Ethernet 1/3 to 1/6 that will participate. So I will enable them here. So I'll click on 1/3. As we can see, we have different deployment mode. Tab, HA, virtual wire, layer 2, layer 3. But we are concerned with HA now. We click on it. Now, every other thing is grayed out. There's no provision to continue anything apart from click OK. In other words, it means we are not doing anything when we are enabling HA on the interface. We are not doing any, we are not enabling any functionality. So I will go to the 1/4, repeat the same task. I click OK. I'll go to 1/5, repeat the same task, select HA, I click OK. The same thing on the other interface, which is 1/6, I click HA, I click OK. Now we have wonderfully enabled some of the interfaces we want to utilize. So now the next step is to go to where? Is to go to the device tab. We click on device tab. By default, our device tab will be on what? Setup. So if it's on setup, any other functionality we want to enable before we do the HA, we can do that. Maybe we go to the general settings. Like this firewall, I want to make it firewall 1 or firewall A. I will write it here. Firewall A. If I have anything like a warning for intruders, I can put it there, but this is just a lab, so we click OK here. Another thing we can check, if we have not configured our DNS, we can check for the DNS server, but I've done that through the command line. So everything is look fine here. So to enable HA, we go to device, we click on high availability. When we click on that, the prompt will show another page. From Paloalto has changed their version over time. The version before 9.1 and below don't have this type of display. So they've put some functionality or different display mode in 10.1, which is fine. So to enable HA, we just need to click on this gear icon. It is edit. We click on it, and then we enable it here. This is just step by step on how to deploy HA firewalls in Paloalto network file. In any Paloalto firewalls, it could be SMB, it could be high-end. This is just the step by step. So it is expected that we put group ID, and the group ID is unique to every HA deployment. In other words, anything we put here, and if you look at it, it is specified that we should put from 1 to 63. So any number we put here should be replicated in the pair. So now, if I put 100 here, it's going to tell me no, because it has been specified that it should be from 1 to 63. In other words, let me put 10. So if I put 10 here, I should remember to put 10 on the pair. So now, The question is asking us here is that we should put what? Pair HA1 IP. Pair HA1 IP and the pair backup HA1 IP address. And then from the lab, we see that we have 3.3.3, 4.4.4, 3.3.4, 4.4.5. I want to use 3.3.3 for my HA1, and I want to use 4.4.4 for my HA1 backup. So that is for the firewall A. On firewall B, I want to use 3.3.4 and then 4.4.5. In other words, when we go back to the firewall, what is asking us is the pair IP address that is for HA1 and HA2. So this is what we are going to input. This is what we're going to input first. So let's go back to the firewall. So we put 3.1, 3.3.3.4. And then on that side, we put 4.4.4.5. Okay, let's check the lab again if you're correct. Okay, that's fine. Now the next is to click OK. That is one step. And if you look at here, we have active passive settings, we have election settings, we have HA provide settings. So if we click on active passive settings, we see that we have passive link state. By default is shut down, but for the best practice, we need to put it on the auto and click OK. This is what? Monitor fail hold down time. This is time down. That is, if the monitor link is down for 1 milliseconds, the failover is going to automatically trigger. This is assume that the monitor link or passive link should be up. So we'll click OK here. So another thing we need to do here is election setting, which is paramount to this setup. So we click on this gear icon. So by default, we see that device priority is 100. So in Paloalto, the device priority or election settings, the matrix is this. The lower matrix takes the precedence over the higher matrix. So the lower matrix is assume the role of active, while the higher matrix we assume the role of what? Passive. In Fortinet, the lower matrix, the higher matrix takes what? The active, the lower matrix takes what? Passive. It is opposite of Palo. So you can just take note of that. So now we have selected, it's 100 by default. Let's put our own like 50 here, and then we'll leave the other side for default. We are putting 50 here, and then we need to click on preemptive. Preemptive is to make this guy to, in case it runs out or it fails down or it is shut down intentionally or unintentionally, when repair takes place or when it comes up again, this guy will retain the role of active. And then heartbeat backup. That is, we need to back up the heartbeat so that in case one of the backup or the links fail, this other link will be working. So if you check out HA timer settings, we have some other functionality, aggressive, advanced. So when it's aggressive, it will be what? It will be faster, but we leave it from recommended. We click OK. So this HA provide settings, we are not going to play with that now. So another thing we need to click on is to go to the HA communication tab. Click on here. So we can see that we have, this is where the magic will occur. We have HA1 and HA2. So, and then we have HA2 backup and HA2 data links and HA2 backup. So we know that our HA2 links is what? It's a layer 2 link. It doesn't require an IP address. While our HA1 link is what? It's a layer 3 link. It requires an IP address. So we're going to quickly jump into that now. We click on the gear icon. By default, we can see that this port takes management port. That is, it's okay, I'm going to use the management. We can specify the management we want to, the interface we want to use. We can specify the interface we want to use. So in this our lab, we're going to say, okay, we are using 1/3 for HA1, and then we'll put the IP address. So what is our IP address? We're going to put 3.3.3.3, and then we put the subnet mask 2.5.255.255.255.0. Another thing we need to pay attention to is gateway. In case this firewall is set up from different locations, maybe routing need to take place between the two firewalls, it is expected that we put the gateway. In case we are setting up one firewall in Texas, another one is in New York, they are not in the same location, we should put the gateway so that they can communicate at the same time they can sync. In other words, another thing we need to pay attention to is when we are creating the HA links, we should make sure that HA1 subnet and HA2 subnet, HA1 subnet and HA2 HA1 subnet HA1 backup, both of them should be in the same subnet. We can put one in /24, one is /27. They're going to be, they may not communicate. So I'll click OK here. That's one of the steps. So I will go quickly to the HA1 backup, do the same thing. I want to use 1/4 here. I'll put the IP address, which is 4.4.4.4. The subnet is /24, which is 255.255.255.0. So same thing applies. We are not using these are our devices, they are in the same location, so there's no need for gateway. We click OK. All right. So the next step is to go to the HA2 links, which is our data link. All right. By default, it says none. Before, Paloalto doesn't enable this by default, but now it is always come by default. So it is expected that we enable it. But from the 10.0 and above, they have enabled this, which is very wonderful. So the port comes none by default. In other words, it gives us ability to select from the array of interfaces. So like this lab, I want to use /1/Ethernet 1/5 as my what? As my backup, as my HA2 link. Why we use the other one 1/6 as backup? This doesn't require what? IP address. Because what? It is layer 2. But if you look at here, we click on the drop down, it has IP UDP. In case we want to change the functionalities or want to assign IP, we need to select one of these. So we click on HA2 keep alive. Like I said before, HA2 keep alive is what? This is the 10,000 or 10,000 milliseconds. If this threshold, we can reduce it, we can leave it default. If you leave it 1,000, every time this ping is sent, and then for 3 consecutive times, the firewall will trigger. And then another thing that can give us overview of what we're doing is anything that is not required, the file, the OK button will be green. If there is a required functional, required templates or required parameters, this functionality will gray out. So we'll click OK here. So another thing we need to do is to create the backup. The same method, we click the drop down, we select 1/6, we just click OK. So now we have completed the AHA links for active deployment. If you look at here, this part is gray out. Part for packet forwarding. Packet forwarding is majorly designed for when we are doing active. You see, it's gray out. So we're not going to touch that now. So let's click on link and path monitoring. Link and path monitoring is for us to specify the interesting links we want to enable or we want to protect. Interesting links, that is, if any of these links goes down, the firewall should be what should trigger, the failover should trigger. So, but now, if you look at my configuration here, I've not configured any interesting link. So if, for example, I come here quickly on layer 3, I put the virtual router, I put it default to zone. Okay, let's say we put on cross zone quickly here. Cross zone. All right. We put cross zone at our internal network. We click OK. And then we'll assign the IP address on the interface, which is 192.168.1.254/24. And then we click OK here. This side too, I want to make it layer 3. That is my external facing interface. I'll click on the, no, I'm not going to layer 2. I'm going on layer 3. I'll click on the virtual router. I'm not going to design one now. I'll click on default. And then now we need to create another one for it, which is on trust. Or I put it outside. It can be any name. It depends on the organizational naming convention. So we'll click OK here. And then we'll put our IP address. The IP address should be what? 150, according to the lab, 150.1.1.2/24. We'll click OK. Click OK. And then we can go to advanced. Do we have any MTU? No, we don't have any MTU for now. So I'll click OK here. This interface will not populate until I click commit. So let me commit and I will come back to the link monitor. So I click commit here. So while this one is committing, let's go back to firewall 2. In the firewall 2, let's go to the network. On this one, we change the pattern. Let's configure all the interface now and we commit so that we can have the interface to select as link monitoring. So first of all, these are the interfaces I want to use to participate in HA deployment. This 1/1/4/5 and /6. So let me start from this 1/3. I will enable the HA link. I click OK. The same steps we follow in the deployment of the firewall 1. We click and then we click OK. We come here as well. We select HA. We click OK. We click on the other interface that I want to use as a backup. We click OK. And then we can see that we have enabled 4 interfaces for the HA. There's nothing we are expected to do here. So I want to go to this side and then enable the interface. This side, as you can see, it is expected that this link should be what? On the same subnet. These 2 links should be on the same subnet. The magic will take place when they sync because they're going to use virtual MAC address to do what? To identify themselves. So I've put 254 here. I can put what? 253 here. Or if I decide, say, okay, I don't want to configure anything there for now, I can just leave this side, cancel. I've enabled all this because the firewall A, that will be the active, will sync everything to the B once they can communicate. So let's see how that one plays out. So now, let's go back to firewall A, which is already completed. So where we stop was where we are doing the link and path monitoring. Now, the link and path monitoring by default says, what is the conditioner for the link to fail? You say it is enabled by default. Say the condition is any. We can specify it in our own way. We click on the gear icon. You see, this is any, this is all. What is the difference between any and all? If you say all and any, to me, it means the same thing, but in their own way, they may just say, oh, all what? All links. That is, if one of the links fail, you can do what? This, it can trigger the failover. But when you say any can be CPU utilization, any can be what? Hardware failure, any can be what? DOS attack. So we leave it default. So link group, we click on add. Now we can just put any name we like monitor. We put it to monitor links. We'll put monitor links. Then we click on what? We click on this add tab. By now, we see that some of the interfaces are populated here. We click on that, our internal interface. We click on the second one, which is external interface, and we click OK. This is for link. Path monitoring, the same thing is enable any condition. So this one, if you have any parts that we want to add, we can just click here and we select the parts and then we'll add it here, but we're not going to do anything of that nature. All right, so we click commit and we go to the other firewall to complete the task. So the other firewall is this. We have not done much on it. So we go to device. After we have enabled the interfaces, we go to device. We click on setup. I want to change this host name as well. So I'll click on this gear icon. This will be my firewall B. And then I'll just click OK. On the service tab, I want to check if the DNS is working fine. Okay, right. I've configured the DNS. So this is okay. Now, the next step is to click on high availability tab here as well. And then we can see that by default, it's not enabled. So we'll click on the gear icon the way we did on the other side, we enable it. This is where we need to be careful, because if you make mistake on the group ID, it will not sync. And then if you look at the mode we are selecting as the one I selected for the firewall A is active by default. Like I said the other time, is that active passive is the most commonly deployed mode. So it comes by default. We can do active as well, but it depends on the requirement and how the traffic is high in our environment. All right. So now to put it's acting now for what? Pair HA1 IP address. Pair HA1 IP address. Now on this node, our pair HA1 address will be what? 3.3.3. Because that's the one we configured for the pair. The backup would be what? 4.4.4.4. And then if you see by default, all this one we did it before on the lower version, we need to enable sync. But if you see it now, it's come by default. Before we need to enable this ourselves, but now it comes by default. What it means is every configuration that is implemented in any of the firewalls will be replicated in the pair. So I click OK here. We have done that. We move on to the active passive settings. We click on the gear icon. We select this auto. We click OK. And then we click on this election settings. We are going to leave this one for 100 because we have lower metric with the other one. We just need to enable preemptive and then enable heartbeat backup, and then we'll click OK. After we completed that, we go to the HA communication. We click on the gear icon here. We select what the interface we want to use, which is 1/3, like the other one. We shouldn't forget that we mentioned that the interfaces should be the same. So we put the IP address, which is IP54. This one's going to be what? 3.3.3.4. And then the subnet mask must be the same. 55.55.0. And then we don't have any gateway. We click OK. We repeat the same steps in this. We click on /4, 1/4, 4.4.5, and then we'll go to the next mask, 55.55.55.0, and then we'll click OK. Now we have completed with the control links. Now we need to go to the data links, select from the drop down. We're going to use 1/5 for our data link, which is it doesn't need an IP address, but we need to enable this H2 keep alive, and then we click OK. And then on the same side as well, we'll select 1/6 the way we did the other side, and click OK. So what is next? Part monitoring. We don't have any part to monitor now because we have configured it on the active member. So what we need to do right now, we just need to send commit. The rule of thumb is this: when we are working in production, we should commit only what we implement. But this is just a lab. You can configure, you can do as you like. So I will do commit. We need to, if it's a production, we need to make sure that we commit only what we implement, and we must validate before we commit. All right, so now let me click commit. So while this one is working, the commit process is going on. Let's go to our HA1. All right, the commit is completed successfully. Configuration completed successfully. So let's go and see the configuration from the dashboard. So I will click on the dashboard. All right. For now, it's showing that this particular pair is what is the active, and then all these links are down. But we can see that the interface is up. We can enable any of these widgets we want. We can remove some of them. We can move them around as we like. But most of the time, people only leave them by default. You can put this one here if you want. It depends on your preference. You can move this one to anywhere you like, depending on your preference. So let's check if this one is completed. So it's 99%. All right. Once it's completed, we just need to refresh here and see if everything we completed is working as expected. All right. We can see that all these links are green, signifies that there's no issue. And then the firewall has what? Has indicated or identified a pair to be of this IP address. It has been an IP or as a pair to be on this IP address. So what is the next thing we need to do? We can still click on this refresh button, and then we need to click on this sync from the active. Click on the sync. Let's say this prompt asks us, are you sure you want to override the configuration of 120? Say yes. So we enable sync. So let's go to the second firewall. The firewall 2 is what? Is committed successfully. We click, close it, we go to the dashboard. You know, on this dashboard, we have not brought up any widgets. So I'll click on system, I'll click on interface. Our interface is up and running, just 2 for now. And then we'll click on the widget again, system, and then high availability. So the high availability is what? It shows that everything is up and running. So let's see from here if the sync is a synchronization is in progress. So now, while synchronization is in progress, but from the Paloalto perspective, once the synchronization completed, we have completed the what? The HA configuration. For us to test, we have some internal users. That is, we need to check if they can traverse our network successfully and without any problem. So now, quickly, we go back to our network. Anything I do, once they are in sync, anything I implement, see, as you can see, they are in synchronized now. They are in sync. So anything I implement from this firewall will be replicated on the other side. So if you go back to the firewall B, which is the second one, if you go to the network, we see that the implementation of the interface is already here. We did not do this here. We only implemented it on the other side. In other words, everything we'll be doing now, it will be one-sided. One-sided, I mean, is we'll be doing our implementation from the firewall A. So I'll go to the network just to test. Now we go to firewall A. We have our zones. We have our zones, but we don't have our virtual router. We don't have virtual router, we don't have NAT. Quickly, we go to static route to test our, okay, static route. Let me just put this here. Static route, and then the destination will be 0.00. That is any, and then interface will be what? The interface, okay, it's not populating any interface here. Well, okay, let me cancel it here. Go back to this. Let me add some interfaces. What some interface is not populated here? All right. The default. Okay, let's go back. Sometimes it might be okay. It now shows that it's default. Before the name was not even populated. See now, it has populated some of the interfaces we have. So sometimes if it doesn't work, we go out, we refresh, and then we come back. Even the production, if something is not working the way you want, the best you can do is to sign out or change the browser. Because you may be doing something that is good on your own side, and then the browser is acting funky. All right. Let me route virtual router GT1, virtual router 1, just for the naming convention of just for identification purposes, 0.0.0/0. And then we need to select the interface from this drop down. Our external interface is /2. We select it and we put the IP address, which is what? For our next up, our next up is 150.1.254 based on the MyLab, and then we leave other things as default. We click OK. We click OK here. All right. Quickly, we go to the policy tab. We create a policy to test all access rule. We do that, and then we go on the policy. I'll put any just to test quickly. Any, that every other thing will be as default. All right. So now, what is the next thing? We create our NAT. So we'll create a source NAT. That is SNAT. We'll click on the origin. Our origin, the packet of origin will be on trust to where? Going to outside. And then we translate the packet. We click on dynamic ampere and port. We select what? Interface. We click on the drop down. We select the particular interface and click on IP address. We click OK. We have done some of the setups. So let's click commit. So after the committed is done, we run some commands to verify if our configuration is working as it should. So now, another thing we can do, apart from checking from the GUI, we can close here while the configuration will be going behind the scene. Every information I pass across here will go to the other firewall. So now, apart from checking this tab, in interview, they only ask this question: what are the places to see our AHA status in Paloalto? The first one is dashboard. The first place is what? Dashboard. The second place is what? Is in command line. Let us mean that we did not enable the widget. We can't see anything here. So for us to see it, we can go to our command line by clicking on the particular firewall. All right, the firewall is opening. So we click on Our A will log in with the credentials, admin, enter, and then we'll put the password. Click enter. So now, to do that, we can run this command. We can do show what? Show high availability. You just type high, just tab to complete it for you. If you don't know the next step to the next tab, we can just put this, press shift and then question mark to give us some of the options. Like now, we want to see our high availability state. You put the state there, click enter. And you can put your, so we can see that group is 10. The mode is passive, active, passive. The version is 1. And then what again? This is the management IP. This is a control HA link. This is preemptive. Priority of this is 50. So it will give us some visibilities. This is the state. What about we want to see all, or we want to use all? Or we want to say, okay, we want to see the cluster state. We can still run this another command similar to that. We can just put this one, show high availability cluster what? State. Some of the command may be duplicated. Let me see if they have cluster there. Control link, status, interface, link, monitoring part, session, establish, session synchronization. Cluster is not enabled here, but we can do what? State synchronization, or we can use what? We can check for interface. Okay, the interface, and then to ask us which interface? HA1. We'll click enter. So this is our HA1 interface. From here to here, this is the details. So it's showing us that the CPU level, the hardware interface counter read. If the HA is not up and running, all these things will not come up. So it shows us that we have physical port counter read, and then interface IP address. So those are the things we can just have for visibility purposes. So let's go back to the file, to the lab, and then we'll check if this thing, the firewall is already completed the commit. All right, so let's test. So from Victor PC, which I've configured with one IP address before. So the IP address of this is what? 192.168.1.10. So let me ping my gateway first. 192.168.168 dot what? Dot 1.255.54. It will not ping because we did not attach what profile to the interface. We did not do that. So, but we can quickly do that either from the command line or from the GUI. Let's do GUI. Okay, we go to the where's the network management interface, management profile. Okay, we click here. So now You can just call it ping. Ping. And they want to enable only what? Only ping. If you have any other parameter IP, we specify here, we'll click OK. All right, let's go back to our interface. I attach that we attach the NTU we configured now. That's management profile we configured. So click OK here. We go back to the other one. Any interface we want to assign it to, we assign it to them. And then we click commit here. So we do that. While that one is going on, let's try to ping the other side, which is what? Ping 150.1.1.254. This interface is 254. So we're going to ping it. So I'll click enter. All right. So I've already clicked enter. All right. Okay, it's working now. So what we do is this. Let me put this interface here just for visibility purposes. .254 on this subnet. This is .2. I will need to duplicate this one. This is .2. And then let me duplicate this one as well. This is .2.2.254. So now we are from this user, which is Victor, we have tried to ping our edge router, which goes across what? Across the firewall. So we do complete pinging to that router to test our failover. So now we can see that it's going. So when we are configuring this firewall, we selected some links to be monitored, which is called monitor links, /1 and /2. So let's go back to our lab. We make sure that this link, this pinging is going on. So to test the failover, I will suspend one of these links. So I want to suspend this. Okay, let me check on the firewall 2 if the same configuration is replicated. See, it's not replicated. So let's put the monitoring link here too. Monitor link. All right, we click OK, and we commit it. So we close it. So, but as we can see, this thing is still continue from the inside user to our edge router. Let me even see. Okay, let's test that one first before we start muzzle things up. So this thing is continue. So what we need to do to test we can shut down any of these two interfaces, either from the inside or from the outside. But our inside is critical, our outside is critical to us. So let's do outside first. The outside can be that, oh, the ISP has issue. So for that particular link is done, or the switch that particular link is connected to is done. So let me suspend the link. And then while I suspend the link, the ping is still going on, but you can see that there's a timeout. It times out 2, and then the continuous pinging continue. In other words, our users will have seamless, they will have no experience of the failover, because the failover takes or occur seamlessly. Our user will not have any experience or notice that something occur, because the time it takes is 96, or it even takes, the first one, it takes 60 milliseconds. So it is not very, very obvious. So we go to the firewall back, we go to the dashboard, and then look at the feasibility again. We can see that the link, one of the link is red. And then our widget was suspended before. Let me bring the widget back. So we see that local has one non-functional link. One link is done. In other words, this guy has taken the role of active. So now it tells me that we are doing maintenance on this, or we are doing some maintenance on the switch. The link is done for one particular link, for example. So the traffic will still be flowing. So I want to enable the link back. So I will resume it. So we go back to what? To our firewall. We see that immediately I enable that link. Okay, let me refresh here. You see, the local is what? The local is in state of passive. This is active now. But in production, based on the fact that we enable the preemptive, it should resume the role of what? Active. So some of these VMs, sometimes, okay, even this one has even, all right. Okay, this is the active now, the other one is the passive. But its effective behavior is that it should resume the role, but it may take some time now. But we have tested the two functionality, and then we have tested the what's it called? The failover. So what are the methods we can failover intentionally? We can go to the device. From the device tab, this particular place is called operation command. This operation command, when we go there, we can shut down the links or suspend the local, shut down the HA performance, or we suspend the particular device to be from HA. This is one of the recommendations when we are doing the upgrade. This is one of the recommendations when we are doing the upgrade. We suspend this. When we suspend it, and then we go to what? We go to the general tab. We disable what? Preemptive. During upgrade, we disable what? Preemptive, to avoid what? Intermittent failover. So that will be the end of this session. So what I will do now, like I said before, apart from failing over or dysfunctionalize this here, we can still run the command from the CLI. and then we test it. But let's do something, make the device function again. If you run it again, it's going to come back again. It's just very simple as is it. So initial leaving suspended state, and then it's okay. If you can see now, I was saying it before that this is our active member, but this guy has assumed the role of active, but in production, it will work fine seamlessly. Or this one may work as well, but it may take some time to resume the role based on some underlay issue. So I've run some command before, but if you don't want to go to GUI, some people CLI stuff. So we can run the command from CLI from any of the pair or any of the devices we want to work on. But most of the time, it's good to check with our administrator, our manager to get approval. And then if it's in production, we check if it is during the maintenance window. So we check before we run any command, because it can be disastrous. So another command we can run if you don't want to do it from GUI is to run, we can request higher availability suspense. And then, like we said, if we forget to run a command, once you just write the first word, you press shift down and press the question mark. It will give us options. It's just for us to know where we're going. Now we run request high availability. We press the tab 8, suspend. So you can just click enter. Okay, successfully change agent to suspend. If you want to bring it back, the same command can be run. We just need to change the word suspend to functional. You click enter, and then the word, the performance will change to functionality. So that's the end of it. So any question?
Mr. Abiodun, please, can I see that command again, please? The last command of the CLI.
Okay, give me 1 minute.
Okay.